In December of 1983, a Navy seaman named Sonny Grattan is gunned down in his hometown of Belfast, Maine. Detectives suspect a murder for hire, with Sonny's wife Norma doing the hiring, and a local con named Joel Fuller doing the shooting. With no evidence to support the theory, the Grattan case goes cold. 17 years later, detectives from the Maine State Police and Naval Criminal Investigative Service join forces to reopen the case. They happen upon a friend of Fuller's named Larry Phillips, who tells them about a conversation he had with Fuller one night while they drove Maine's backcountry. It began with some small talk about a .30-30 rifle.
And Joel asked me if I want a .30-30, and I said, sure. And he said, well, there's one up the brook.
Fuller directed Phillips to a small bit of water in the Maine woods.
So I stopped the car and I started to get out. And he said, don't bother, it's not any good anyway, it's bent. It's the only thing it's good for is shooting around corners.
A rifle similar to the one Joel Fuller described was pulled from the same brook in 1985, 2 years after the murder. Cold case detectives believe it to be the murder weapon.
The barrel was bent, the stock was broken, and there was other damage to the gun, very much like the gun that Joel Fuller said that he threw there.
Fuller mentioned a woman who hired him to kill her husband. According to Phillips, Fuller didn't name names, but said the dead man was some military guy.
And then he started telling me about how he waited for him behind the woodpile. He waited for him to get home, and when the guy reached the house and reached for the door, he shot him in the back. And as he was laying on the ground, he was pleading with him. He shot him again through the hand and into the head.
We knew that Larry could have obtained that information only two ways. That was, he was the shooter, or he received that information from the shooter.
Larry Phillips tells detectives he was on the job at the time Sonny Grattan was shot. A punch card from work backs him up. With Phillips eliminated as a suspect, cold case detectives are entirely convinced that Joel Fuller is their shooter. They pay him a visit at a federal prison in Pennsylvania, where Fuller is serving a life stretch for 2 unrelated murders. Fuller refuses to talk. The detectives, however, think they can still use the convicted killer as a threat to get his accomplice talking. The Maine DA obtains an indictment against Joel Fuller for the shooting death of Sonny Grattan.
What we wanted to do is release that at a strategic time and approach Norma with an undercover agent that would be posing as Joel Fuller's friend, wondering why information got out to get him indicted.
An NCIS agent we'll call Tony approaches Norma, purportedly to find out who's been ratting out his pal, Fuller.
Tony was a convict from the penitentiary where Joel was serving time. Joel's serving time in a federal penitentiary. So I assumed the role of a prison friend.
Norma? You Norma?
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
Okay.
I'm Tony.
What deal?
My name's Tony. I'm a friend of Joel Fuller. He sent me out here to talk with you.
Norma and Tony climb into Norma's car, and Tony gets to the heart of the matter.
Listen, the police have come back talking to Joel, and he's scared. And he wanted me to come out here. I owe Joel some favors from the penitentiary. He did some things for me. And he's heard that somebody's cooperating in the case. And
Sure ain't me, honey. No, sir. No.
Okay. Well,
No.
Joel really didn't think it was you.
No, no way.
Okay. Well,
But I don't know who it could be.
all right. Well, let me ask
Far from a bereaved and innocent widow, Norma tells Tony again and again that she's kept her mouth shut all these years and expects the same from Fuller.
Yeah.
Yeah, but get word back to him. There's no leak here. No leak whatsoever.
Well,
And I expect the same
well,
on that end. I don't know where...
In Norma Small, the undercover operation has struck a gold mine, and Tony plays it for all it's worth. He fishes for more names, suggesting if Norma isn't talking about her husband's murder, maybe it's someone else.
who else did you tell?
Oh, you would ask me real quick. Big, tall fella. Oh, shoot, what is his name? Boyd
Right.
Smith.
Back in the cold files, detectives happen across Smith's name.
Turned out Boyd Smith was a former boyfriend of one of the Groton girls, and for a year or so before the murder had lived at the Groton residence.
At the time, Smith claimed he knew nothing of the murder, and police never considered him a suspect. Now, an undercover operation has revealed a connection that may have been overlooked. At the edge of a New England cemetery, two undercover operatives sit in a truck and fidget. Tony, the operative who first met with Norma Small, now has a friend, Bubba. Together they pose as prison pals of Joel Fuller, sent to talk to Boyd Smith and find out if he has been talking with police. At 12 o'clock, Smith finally shows and hops into their truck. After some small talk, the agents get down to business.
Well, what was the actual agreement with you and Norma? How did that all come about?
Norma wanted her husband gone. I mean, that was the bottom line. She was always bitching and rah-rah-rahing about it and this and that. And when she asked me if I would do it, I said, no way, can't do it. And then she said, well, can you put me in contact with, arrange something? So,
And then you put her in contact with Joel?
I didn't make any agreement with Joel. I put him in contact with her.
Boyd Smith's admissions to the undercover agents seemed to be the last major piece of the puzzle that drew connections in this plot, both to Norma Small and Joel Fuller.
Small, Fuller, and Smith will be tried separately, each charged with murder. In the winter of 2002, Central Maine hunkers down for 3 separate murder trials. The results, however, are not what cold case detectives expect. 2 different juries acquit Boyd Smith and Joel Fuller of murder charges. In Fuller's case, the problem is Norma Small. During police questioning, she failed to implicate Fuller as the triggerman.
You're being fairly honest with us, but you're not telling us the Joel portion of this, and that bothers me.
That's why I can't help you with that, because I wasn't involved with him at any point.
As for the statements she made to an undercover agent,
Yeah, but get word back to him. There's no leak here. No leak whatsoever.
those tapes are ruled inadmissible as hearsay in the Fuller trial.
Unfortunately, there's just a lot of the evidence that we couldn't get in, and the jury had to go by what they heard, and they just didn't have enough to convict him.
As for Boyd Smith, the evidence against him clearly showed he conspired to commit murder. State law, however, barred prosecutors from bringing the conspiracy charge, leaving jurors with a choice of murder or acquittal.
I think the jury had a hard time convicting him of murder in that his role in the case doesn't really seem to be the role of a murderer. It's more of a conspiracy to commit murder or a solicitation or a charge along that line.
Where Smith and Fuller walked away clean, Norma Small had no such luck. A third jury convicts her of murder and sentences her to 70 years at the Maine Correctional Center for Women. For cold case detectives, the failure to secure convictions against Fuller and Smith is mitigated by 2 things. First, Fuller is already serving a life sentence and will never be released into society. Second, the heart and soul of this murder for hire was Norma Small, the woman who had her husband gunned down in his own driveway and never showed a moment's worth of remorse.
This is the person who instigated the plan, who put it in motion, and this is the person who ultimately was responsible for her husband's death. So we are pleased with her conviction.